The most difficult thing was trying to make sure I get my point of view over to the kids and also get their point of view of what they would like. You can write so much, but you want to know their personal experience where you could implement it into what you're writing about.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. I'm your host, Dan Ricoberry, and here we have our new guest. Say hello to Moon Jones. Hello, Moon. Hey. How are you?
I'm doing great. I can't complain at all. I'm here in LA where it's kind of warm and such, but everything is fine.
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling good. I'm just happy to be here to do a podcast on some of the things I'm working on.
Excellent. So tell me, how long have you been a writer?
Just a writer off in general, about 10, 12 years. For my books, I've only been writing that for about 7 or 8 years. I've written a couple of movies, a little short movies and such, for a rapper named Master P. And then I've written some other little movies here and there, little small products and such. But as a book writer, I've been writing for about 8 or 9 years.
Oh, you have a lot of time on that. That's cool.
Yeah, I haven't published anything in about 5 or 6 years, though.
Okay. How long did you take to finish your first book?
Maybe 2 or 3 years. In fact, I've rewritten it to add more chapters to it because a lot of people really liked it and they wanted to know about the characters a little bit more. So I rewrote it and I'm about to re-release it in a couple of weeks.
That's great. I guess you need like 5 years to re-release a book, like a special edition.
Well, yeah, like a special edition.
Are you going to add something new to it, or like?
Oh yeah, most definitely. The original book was like 144 pages. This book is like 240 or 250 pages.
Wow, it's basically double. Impressive.
Yeah. And then on the side, I was writing my other books while I was rewriting this one. The first one was called Big Head and Cornrow.
Yes, I saw it on Amazon the other day when I was doing my research.
Oh, okay. That was a good one because it gave me the motivation to write it for the kids who I was working with at the time.
It does seem to have that style. So tell me, are you a full-time writer or are you doing like something else besides?
I teach at a school for kids with special needs called Big Head and Cornrow Center, which is in Culver City, California. And so, I do that on the side, but like I would like to become more of a full-time writer. Like I said before, I wrote and directed a movie called I'm About It with a rapper named Master P. And that was an experience in itself. But at the time I was still working with the kids and I would just tell them stories off the cuff. And so they wanted me to write it in a book form so they could read it. So that's when I started writing books.
Okay. How did it start? Like your experience, how did you decide to write your first book?
The experience was different because like when you're writing a screenplay for a movie, it's not as long. In a book format, it becomes long because you have to delve into the history and you actually have to do homework on what you're writing about. And so the homework was the biggest thing for me was delving into things and then talking to the kids to see if they comprehend it. Because you can write something, but if they don't comprehend what you're writing, then you're not doing them justice. You're not doing them justice. So I started off with little small stories. And then from the small stories, I expanded it. And then I developed the characters. And so the stuff I write about is basically science fiction. So you gotta really delve into it. And then you gotta look at the different science fiction books out there.
So tell me, are you traditionally published or self-published?
A little bit of both. The original book I wrote, Big Head and Cornrow, Trouble in New Orleans, that was published by a small company, but through I used them to publish my book. In fact, a friend of mine owned the company, and so I wrote the original book, and then I published it, and that was my first experience. So I didn't know exactly what was going to happen with it.
How did you find the publisher?
I grew up with the publisher. So both of us went to school together at Loyola University. And so she knew that I like to tell stories and stuff. And she kept encouraging me and encouraging me. Finally, between the kids and my friend, I started writing a book. And then she had a little small printing press and she published the book.
And then after that, you decided to go self-publish.
Yeah, Amazon was really picking up on their self-publishing such. So my second book was actually published through Amazon. And that was good because I could pace myself. I knew I had to be a lot more professional. So that was really, really good. A great experience publishing it through Amazon.
That's great. I suppose, well, there are some that prefer the publishers, but yeah, I do agree that self-published it's less annoying in a way.
Well, yeah, the only problem is with the presses like professional presses like Penguin and the other publishers out there. If you don't know somebody, you have to know somebody. So it's always, and you can send a lot of stuff out there, but most of the time they want to go through a talent agent, and then the agents want you to have something published. And then, like, I'm from a small city like New Orleans, and so we don't have that many publishing companies out there. And so you have to send to New York or Chicago or some other places in order to get things published.
Yeah, I suppose their tastes probably influence the editing process later on.
Yeah.
Is there another author that inspired your work?
Yeah, C.S. Lewis.
I
with
know
the
it.
Chronicles of Narnia. J.R.R. Tolkien. With the Lord of the Rings and such. The Lord of the Flies author. I can't remember his name offhand, but that was one of the ones that impressed me about doing books for kids. You know, especially minority kids. A lot of the kids who I worked with wanted to see themselves in the movie, or in the books. And so when I started writing, I knew I had to delve into some of the authors who wrote books for kids and such, especially science fiction, because you can actually go into things where kids see themselves as the adventurer. They had a lot of Black books out there, but the problem was it was always period pieces and like Sounder, quite a few books out there that made it like the kids didn't have a say-so in what was going on in their lives. So, and I worked with a lot of Hispanic, African-American, Asian kids and such. So they wanted to see more of themselves, along with some of the white kids who wanted to see themselves as far as dealing with problems and such, and how they could resolve it amongst each other.
So, what's the most difficult thing you struggled with at the start of your career as a writer?
The most difficult thing was trying to make sure I could get my point of view over to the kids and also get their point of view of what they would like. You can write so much, but you want to know their experiences. So, their personal experience where you could implement it into the what you're writing about, the context of what you're writing.
Right. How's your writing routine? Are you a planner, a plotter, outliner?
I'm more of an outliner. Yeah, I like outlining and then trying to box myself into a corner and to see how I would get out of it. And I found that helped me out a lot because it made the story a lot more believable.
Usually, I never end up following my own outlines, but it's funny because having them there does help to keep track of everything, even if you ended up writing something else.
Right, exactly. And so what I'll do with the stuff that I didn't use, I'll put it on the side and then see if I can use it for later on.
Exactly. So, do you have like a story of how you named your book, like the first one?
Big Head and Cornrow, it actually was based on the name was based on myself and a friend of mine growing up. Because like in high school they used to call me Head because of my big forehead, and then my friend was named Bushhead Cornrow because he always had his hair braided, and the girls used to love him for his braided hair and such like that. So when I started writing, a lot of kids nowadays go by nicknames. My nickname was Moon back in the old days. And so when I started writing the book, I used those particular names as characters in the book.
Oh, well, any experience can be used in the end.
Oh yeah. Because like when you're writing a story, if you look at the characters that you develop, you can realize that these people are the people that you're familiar with would do this and that. In fact, when I sampled out the pages to the people who I was writing for, especially women, they would give me the information. Oh no, he wouldn't do that. Oh no, they wouldn't do that. They do this and that. And so it was easy for me to write it out and such. I remember the first time I talked about a friend of mine had a party and they had a bunch of women at the table, and he was telling them I was about to write a book. And they asked me what the name of the book was, and I said Big Head and Cornrow. Well, they all started laughing. And so, but the thing about it, they said I'd buy it because my son doesn't have anybody like themselves to read about, and I know they would read it, and that's when I knew I had something going there.
Of course. So, do you write only children books or do you have other genres?
Well, in my movie writing, I was writing about the hood life with I wrote a movie called I'm About It with Master P, I mentioned before. And that was about him growing up in the hood and the thug life that he had to go through in order to get to where he is at today. Right now, he's a real popular rapper. And so, but like I write some serious things as far as I have a book coming out, which is more of a melodrama. It's called Shelter 39. And it's about, it deals with people who have to live in a shelter and what they go through. And then another one called The Ugly Detectives. And it's about these detectives who have to deal with people who are in poor circumstances and they can't pay them. So they have to do like barter in order to get somebody to investigate their cases. So yeah, I do more than the children book, but the children book is my mainstay. I love writing for the kids because they love reading. It's something that's interesting for them to read about. And if I can make them, like I said, I work with children with special needs, and so I want to try to get them to read a little bit more.
That's good. So, do you have like a main message on your main series that's present in all the books?
Yeah, like for example, my next book is called Big Head and Cornrow Undercover. And it expands on the story of the two characters who I originally wrote about how they're undercover police officers from the fifth dimension. One of the reasons I wrote about it was because in today's society, we look at the police as enemies. And so I wanted to show that the police are not our enemies, that they have a life too, and it could be kids. And kids would, like to read kid cops. And so instead of them carrying guns and such like that, I thought about the safest devices that they could use, and that was cones. the cones that you have on the sidewalk and such, and they call them mega cones. And they use these cones as weapons against creatures of the night, like megabytes and such. So, most of my messages is try to be a little bit more positive. And like, for example, one of my books is called Buffalo Warriors. So in the old days, they used to have these buffalo soldiers. But what I wanted to do was have Buffalo Warriors about these people who dealing with the kids. If you ever noticed in all the slave movies or any of the movies, that there were always adults, but we never knew what the kids were doing at the time. So when I wrote it from a teenage point of view.
Yeah, I mean, they are present, but I don't think I ever saw any movie about being the protagonist.
Right. Well, and that's one reason I try to write things that where we see it from a teenager or a child's point of view, how they deal with it. And so in the Buffalo Warriors, which is a great book, it's out on Amazon through Exhiblis. I published it through Exhiblis, and it's a great book because you have these teenagers with unusual abilities from the water that they drink, but their mother forced them to keep their abilities hidden because they don't want the master to find out, because if the master finds out, he'll kill them. But in the end, they have to use it in order to escape the plantation that they're on. Great storyline, great characters. Some of the characters are really, really unusual.
Wow. What's your largest goal as an author right now?
My biggest goal is to try to get my books out there, build an audience, to try to get my audience to to demand more of me as far as writing, because I do love writing. I love telling stories. And I would like to make money off of it, but that's not my biggest goal. My biggest goal is to get the stories out there and to make me a writer that people would want to visit and just love my product.
What advice would you give to new authors starting right now?
I would tell them to keep on writing, catalog this stuff. Instead of just writing one book, after you finish that one book, go to another one, and then go to another one and another one until there was a science. When I was looking up writers, like for people like myself, there was a writer named Octavia Butler, and Octavia Butler was a sci-fi writer. She just recently passed a couple of years ago. And I read her background, how she started, how her mother helped her get her first typewriter and such, how she, in fact, she had a movie called Kindred that just went out, that came out a little ways back. And then she had some other books out there, and she just kept on writing, and finally they started making some of her books into movies. And so that inspired me. It's just, like, people get inspired by basketball players or football players. I used to coach college basketball and such, and I won a national championship as a college coach, and not a college coach, but a AAU coach. I won state championships as a high school coach. But basketball was a hobby for me. Writing is a love. It's a love.
A way of life.
Yeah.
So, how much research would you say you put into your books?
A lot. A lot. There's a thing in the Buffalo Warriors. It takes time. It's a period piece where it takes place in the Civil War. So I had to learn about Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, some of the Civil War people who were like generals and like Sherman. And so I had to delve into the research on them. In fact, Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Frederick Douglass are in that book as characters. And so, I knew I had to do research on them, but I also gave them a little bit of more character, because when we read about them, it's not that much background as far as what kind of people they were. So I had to develop that type of person and the character I thought that they were. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I tried to be as fact based as possible.
Yeah, I do understand. I did interview a guy that do historical fiction, and he said that
Mm,
it's impossible to completely be 100% historically accurate. So it's always 80% facts and 20% is imagination.
right, right, exactly right. Yeah, and I enjoyed it. There are some scenes with Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, which is hilarious. That's the least I can say because both of them were two different type of one. One was like almost 6 feet tall, and the other one was like 5'3". And so I put them together, and so they kind of get out on each other's nerve a little bit because one thing, it's a contrast in character. And then with Frederick Douglass, him and Sherman, I put together, and Sherman is always talking to him about a man of many, um, uh, uh, a man of many different types of characters and such like that. So it was interesting.
Do you have like a support network with other authors to like help each other?
Well, a friend of mine who I work with, Legend Vega. In fact, he's here right now. He was one of the people who inspired me and really tried to push forward my storylines for each book that I was writing. And so, yeah, I worked with him a lot as far as developing my stories and getting my books and such, because it's something that he likes to read. He works with kids and such, and so he knows exactly what the kids want to see.
What has been the greatest challenge you have faced on all your career?
The getting the stuff out there because you can write it, you can
Like publicity.
yeah, marketing, publicity, because even though that or you think that your product is good, you want to get it out there to an audience because always my rule of thought is there's a void out there. In the void, you have to put things in that void and make it come through and get it out there because people want your stuff. You just got to go find out where the people are at that who want your stuff.
So, what are your plans for the future?
My plans is to start, like most of my books are like trilogies, continuations, and so what I want to do is start filling out and delving into the second part of the story or the third part of the story. Because I want to be honest with you, as an author, and I'm sure you want to see the ending. You want to find out what happens to the characters in the end, how they develop.
Actually, my editor told me that these days bundles with a whole series sells better than the solo books.
Right,
So it
right,
will be great to promote your series, your complete series,
right,
or at
right,
least how J.K. Rowling did in the past. Like the four first Harry Potter books were sold
right,
together.
right, right. Yeah, I love J.K. Rowling, and the reason I love her is because how she took these characters as a single mom on welfare and such, and she just was writing, and that inspired me. It inspired me because she didn't know if she was going to have an audience or if her audience was going to accept what she was writing. And she just kept on writing until it became a 7-book series. And I just love people like that who just, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, at least I'm satisfied that I got it out there.
All right. So, can you tell me, like, if are you planning to go to an event in person, a signing or something recently?
I plan on going to like some book events. I haven't booked them yet, but I'm reading on some of the events that are out there. And when I do, I'll post it on Facebook or Instagram. So whatever fans I do have can come and see me, and I can just sign my name and smile and just say yippee.
Just for the people that are seeing this, basically just put in Google Moon Jones. Literally, all of his is there. You're lucky that your pen name is actually very rare, so no, there's no confusion there.
I'm glad to hear that.
I literally googled your name and I got everything from you.
Oh, seriously. I don't even Google myself, so I'm happy to hear that. Somebody else told me that just recently, that they Googled me and they saw some of the stuff, the movies I've done and the books and all that other stuff. And then, what is that, IMD? I
Like
forgot.
IMDb, yeah, I saw it too.
Yeah, it's in that too. So I'm happy to hear that because I'm too busy writing to even look it up.
Oh, God. Do you have like an advice for people that are like getting their first cover or their first publisher or their first marketing strategy, stuff like that?
Yeah, my biggest advice is try to find some people who you can sample your product out to. It's like if you're working at a food place and you want to sample out your food and such. So I sample my stuff out there just to see if I'm on the right track. That doesn't mean you have to listen to everything that people say. But for example, the movie I'm About It. Somebody sent me an interview about reading about the movie, and I read it, and they hated almost everything in the movie. They hated it with a passion. But the point is that they remembered almost every single thing about the movie, and they remembered what they didn't like and what they couldn't understand. And I was happy because the movie kept them entranced on what I was shooting and why they didn't like it. And they remembered more than what I remembered while I was shooting the movie. So, and it's the same thing with a book. People are going to like it. Some people are going to love it, and some people are not going to like it at all. I met a guy who just read both of my books, two of my books, The Glimmer of Light, and I want to show my picture for The Glimmer of Light. This is a book I put out there. And so what I loved about this book was the character. It's about a little African boy who smuggles in to the country searching for something that's been stolen from his tribe and the adventure he goes on. What I love, I was about to say about this, one of the guys who used to see me come and write in this area, and he read both the Glimmer of Life and the Buffalo Warriors in about a month's time, maybe 2-3 weeks. And he remembered everything about the story, remembered everything.
That's great.
And, and he loved it.
It's a success.
Yeah, and he loved it. And I was shocked.
The more someone remembers your book, that means that it's a success for you.
Right. And that's the real thing that inspires more than anything else. It inspires me to keep on writing because just to see people talk about it and how they liked it and what pushed them. It's a great feeling.
Yeah. So, well, I think that's all for now. Thank you everyone for coming to another episode of Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. And thank you, Moon Jones, for accompanying us.
Well, I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Hope we can talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.